Absolutely brilliant stuff.
Awesome. It was a historic triumph.
The Diamonds have done it.
The Australian Diamonds were crowned netball champions of the world for a 12th time after a dominant display at the Sports World Cup in South Africa last month.
They are undoubtedly the deserving winners.
The feat was made all the more spectacular given weeks earlier these players, national team heroes, were told by their governing body they wouldn't be getting even a small pay rise next year.
World Cups are so difficult to win and it caused a huge amount of stress.
And the sport and its administration is millions of dollars in debt.
It just doesn't seem to be in a place where growth is constant as it was. And so for me, how do you continue to grow? It just seems a bit stagnant at the moment.
On any given Saturday morning across Australia, this is a familiar sight. Among young women, netball is the highest team participation sport in Australia. But former players say the sport's governing body hasn't been able to turn grassroots success into interest in the sport's elite league, Super Netball.
I don't know what it is, and I don't know if there's anyone that if you ask could actually put their finger on why that disconnect is, but isn't that where you should be putting the money and investment? Because if you get those hundreds of thousands, if not millions of girls and women playing netball and you're getting them along to games, buying your products, supporting your sport, I don't understand how you can't make money.
You've got fantastic participation rates, you've got the success of the Australian Diamonds internationally, you've got the greatest competition in the world being played in Australia with predominantly Australian players. But there's a revenue piece that's missing, and that's the big $1 million question.
Slapped onto it by Liz Ellis.
Liz Ellis, a legendary former Australian captain, chaired a review into the state of the sport in 2020. She believes turning more grassroots players into fans will eventually generate more revenue.
If you're someone who plays on a Saturday or in a social competition during the week, it's got to be made really clear to you about how you become involved as a fan, as a watcher, someone who sits down and watches the game, either at the game or watching the broadcast.
After gradual improvement in the sport's finances, netball was hit hard by COVID and recorded losses of $7.2 million over the pandemic period. But in 2022, Hancock Prospecting, the mining company owned by Australia's richest woman, Gina Rinehart, offered to sponsor the national team to the tune of $15 million. But the deal was torn up after players said they'd feel uncomfortable promoting the company. And even after the Victorian government offered a new sponsorship deal, Netball Australia announced earlier this year it was still $4.2 million in debt. Kelly Ryan is Netball Australia's CEO.
We do have a responsibility to pay back our debt, which we have taken on as a result of COVID, and then find ways in which we can continue to reinvest in the sport.
Earlier this year, she announced Netball Australia couldn't afford to give its players a pay rise. A recent offer of a 2% pay bump was then rejected by players.
I think challenges when they come to negotiations of any type take a long time to resolve, and that's not different to any other sport.
When it comes to player pay, netball is in danger of being left behind. Women's cricket has surpassed netball's wages, and AFLW, a league just 6 years old, is not far behind. Shani Norda left a successful career in netball to join the burgeoning Football League and believes many more women may consider doing the same.
Realistically, a lot of women who are wanting to play professional sport, you do want to get paid so that you can do it full time because it makes you a better athlete.
Netball Australia is hoping to get its hands on some of the $200 million the Prime Minister committed to women's sport after the Women's Football World Cup.
Will hopefully be a key contributor to being able to decide and put forward strong recommendations of how we believe that could be really well invested in our sport.
And she says having more people interested in playing women's sport is a net positive for the game.
It's great that women's sport is now incredibly relevant, and we're enjoying the success of a whole heap of other women's sports, but we'll continue to play our lead role in advocating for better conditions and better opportunities and better commercial returns for women's sport.
It just needs to toot its own horn a little bit more.
So there's all these great things that our sport has got going for it that we really aren't telling that story at the moment.
You know, we're such a humble sport, and I often got tainted as being the loud, naughty netballer. But, build profiles and build the spunk and build the rivalries and make it dramatic and, continue to get people into the stadiums and build the spectacular that what we know that it can be. And I love netball so much. I see what it brings to kids every single day.
1, 2, 3, go on!